Thank you, Chairman. The next item relates to the Bell Public House, or former Bell Public House, at 9 High Street, Haverhill. It's an application for the conversion and extension of the vacant public house building to accommodate an A1 retail shop and 11 residential units. Those 11 residential units will be accommodated within the existing floor space of the building and an extension to the building. The first slide is purely there to show the extent of the existing building. You can see it is a part 2-storey, part 3-storey building which extends back within the site. This is the existing site plan. I would draw your attention to the two parts of the development. We have the frontage here onto High Street. This is High Street in this position here. There is an existing vehicular access which serves the site from the High Street, which runs along the side of the building to a yard area, service, courtyard, car park area at the rear. This is the 3-storey element, 2-storey here, running down to 2-storey. Building D here is currently single-storey, but there is evidence that it was once a much taller building. Across the back of the site is a storage building, which totally encloses the site. This forms the site boundary. Beyond the site is an area of undeveloped land, which is totally inaccessible at the moment. There is no means of accessing that site. Immediately adjacent to the site, on either side, we have the post office with the sorting office and its yard to the rear. Adjacent on the other side, we have the Co-op funeral care building, and there is an alley between that and the Argos building, which runs down the side, and this is the car park belonging to Argos. This area, the car park, the land to the rear of the application site, and the post office yard are identified in the Haverhill Vision 2031 document as being a site with potential for redevelopment at some stage in the future. The application site before you is adjacent to that, but does not include any of that area. So we're looking at the reuse of an existing site. This is just a floor plan of the existing building. You will see this area here is the existing public house with toilet facilities behind, ancillary facilities behind that. On the first floor we have function rooms associated with the use of the public house. At the front there is a residential unit, a flat, and on the top floor there is a large residential flat associated with the public house. Looking around the site, this is the view from the High Street. You can see the post office to the right and the Co-op funeral care building to the left. The application site is the boarded up building you see directly ahead of you. You will also see cars parked in front of it. The car that is closest to the camera is illegally parked in front of yellow lines. The cars beyond that are in marked parking bays. That grey car is actually partially obstructing the access which exists to the side of the building. The boundary of the conservation area runs alongside the application site and the post office. So the application building is within the conservation area. This is looking in the other direction. There's the illegally parked car. This is the existing vehicular access which runs down the side of the building. You can see the building is currently boarded up in a sort of semi-derelict state. This is the existing entrance feature. When the application was submitted, there was a proposal to install an entirely new shop front within the building and put a lightweight but interesting extension infilling this area. Following concerns from local residents your conservation officer and English Heritage, the design of that building has been modified, and the existing frontage, fenestration of the building, is being retained with a new lightweight infill structure here, which will increase the available retail floor space. And part of the reason for that concern was because of the impact it would have upon the setting of the church, which is immediately opposite. So that is, here's for reference, the car parked in front of the yellow line. So you can see the building has a very important relationship with the church. Following the revised details, those objections were withdrawn, both from English Heritage, the conservation officer, and the local resident who had raised objection. This is the elevations of the proposed development. So you see from the front, this is the new infill development on the frontage in that area there. Quite a lightweight structure which would allow the existing fenestration to be seen through it. To the rear of the building, this is a new build element which replaces the existing single-storey element. This would provide residential flat accommodation. In addition, there is an element being built on the side of the building, which is this element here, which would provide an archway through underneath to access the land at the rear. The remainder of the building is all being retained and converted as shown on this plan. This shows the extent of the retail area, which is a significant area. What's being proposed here is a shop unit of significant size. So we're not having one of these situations where we have a sort of token shop unit retained. This is a significant retail floor area being retained. And then there are flat units being proposed above it and behind it. Quick walk around the site. This shows the existing vehicular access, which is located at the side of the building. You can see it runs adjacent to the post office. There have been comments received actually relating to the width of that access, and I can confirm that at its narrowest point, which is actually a pinch point at the front, it is 3.3 metres wide, and at the rear of the site it is 3.4 metres wide, but it actually gets wider in the middle. And this is looking beyond the access, this is looking down the side. As you can see, it is wider further down. Also visible at the back, you can see the roof of the building at the back of the site, which at the moment separates the application site from the site beyond, and that forms an impenetrable boundary. This is that same building. That's the wall of the post office sorting yard, and this building occupies the entire width of the site. The application proposal would remove that building in its entirety. This is a view from the Argos car park looking back towards the building. So this is the application site. This is the single-storey building, but you can see the evidence of the wall, and you can see an outline of a building at the back that used to sit in that position. That would be the main extension to accommodate the additional flat units. This is the building here, which would be removed. Moving around to this shot, this shows the revised, the proposed layout of the site. So here is the land to the rear, which is outside the application site. This is where the existing building stands, which is being removed to be replaced by car parking spaces. You can see the oversailing element of the building here. This is all existing building being retained with the access at the site. Members will be aware that one of the issues that has been raised in respect, probably the main issue that is concerning people in respect of this application, is the impact that the reuse of this building could have upon the implementation of the master plan for the centre of Haverhill. This is a very important issue and has not been considered lightly. The policy that relates to that is policy HV19 in the Haverhill Vision 2031, and I will quote from the relevant policy. It says, applications for planning permission for sites other than already identified in the plan for development and which would have a strategic impact on the development of the master plan will only be considered once the master plan has been adopted as planning guidance by the local planning authority following publication. So the issue you need to consider in respect of this application is, would the development of this site, in the manner proposed, have a strategic impact on the development of the master plan? And I will address that matter in a moment. What I must also mention is that we have, since the report was written, received further representations to the planning application. We've received an objection from Councillor Brown, who is the adjacent ward member and I believe is going to address the committee in respect of this application. I could summarise the comments, but it's probably fairer to leave Councillor Brown to put forward his own views. We have received two further objections, new objections to the proposal. One who is concerned that the access will impact upon pedestrianisation, and the other who is concerned that any new access in the future from Lordscroft Lane will have a major impact on the road, and any access in the future from the Argos car park will significantly reduce car parking in the town centre. We've also had a letter of support for the application, and we have received three further objections from someone who has already objected to the application. And those are reiterating the objections raised earlier on, but also raising concerns and making comments about the Highway Authority and suggesting that the officer has not visited the site and has just done a Google search. I can confirm for members that the Highway Officer from Suffolk County Council has visited the site, knows the site very well, and the views have been carefully considered. So the main issue is the impact of this proposal upon the master plan for Haverhill Town Centre. This is not a greenfield site that we're bringing forward for development. This is an existing site that has an existing building, it has an existing use and legitimate activity. And that existing use is as a public house with residential accommodation. That building currently enjoys unrestricted access to the High Street. That allows the owners of the building to use that access 24 hours a day. If they wish to use it for car parking, they could use it for car parking. If they wish to use it for service vehicles, they can use it for service vehicles. It is unrestricted. What is being proposed is a new use for this building. It will bring a semi-derelict building back into beneficial use. It will bring economic activity with the occupation of the retail unit. It will also provide car parking for 8 vehicles associated with the flats. So, is the introduction of 8 car parking spaces, where currently there is unrestricted access and unrestricted parking, a significant impact upon the achievement of the master plan? I would argue that it is not, but ultimately it's your decision. In terms of the impact this could have on the achievement of the master plan, HV7, policy HV7 of the Haverhill Vision document identifies this land at the rear as a potential site for redevelopment. The development of this site does not in any way impact or impinge upon the development of that area. However, development of that area does also provide an opportunity to provide an alternative means of access to this site, if access was no longer to be provided from the front. Access could be provided from the rear. the layout of this development does not in any way restrict or impinge against that opportunity. So ultimately, members, it is your decision how we determine this. My suggestion to you is that the impact upon the achievement of the master plan for the town centre of Haverhill is not affected by the decision you take today in the determination of this planning application. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, we have 3 public speakers on this one. We have Councillor Tony Bryan, we have Colin Ball, the clerk to Haverhill Town Council, and we have Stephanie Weeks, who is the agent for the development. Councillor Bryan, 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman, members. Before I begin, can I just comment that I've had reports from residents that it seems as if the online planning portal has been offline since yesterday, and residents have not been able to view or make comments on this proposal. In the Haverhill Master Plan of 2005, it was proposed that there was the possibility of constructing a relief road from Canning Junction to Camps Road via lower down Slade. This in turn was designed to allow both Queen Street and the High Street to become permanently pedestrianised. There is a good possibility that the new town centre master plan currently under development will once again suggest this as an opportunity for the town. If that were to happen, then there would be no vehicular access available to proposed properties on the site. No satisfactory answer to restricted access to the property from the High Street has been answered. The fact that on a Saturday no access will be allowed cannot be bypassed by our Section 106 covenant. A recently approved application for a development at lower down Slade Haverhill was only recommended because it was deemed to be affordable housing. No suggestion was made that a Section 106 covenant could be used. This development has no affordable planning element in it. Another development in Empire Yard, some 200 yards further up High Street, is being objected to by the planners on this exact same basis, despite the offer of the Section 106 covenant. It cannot therefore be allowed on one and not the other. There also seems to be potential for pedestrian accidents on the busy High Street footpath, with vehicles entering or leaving the premises where vision is severely restricted, particularly by the Royal Mail building to the east, and to a lesser extent by the building itself to the west. It would appear that Suffolk County Council Highways have failed to investigate this development correctly, in that they have made no mention of any pedestrian safety or access problems. During construction, a narrow turning circle into and especially out of the site could lead to accidents from lorries mounting the pavement on the near side, especially if they are articulated. Because of the lack of access to waste refuse lorries, it would appear that waste bin would be expected to be put out onto the High Street, and frontage on collection days leading to possible litter and pedestrian access problems. This is already a problem elsewhere on the High Street. Suffolk Police have also recently instigated the match-funded PCSO in conjunction with Suffolk County Council Highways and funded by Suffolk County Council locality budgets. It is an effort to reduce the amount of traffic using and parking in a High Street, especially when the TRO is in operation. Now we seem to have the same Suffolk County Council Highways Department encouraging more vehicles into High Street by making no objections around this development. I hope that at the very least the committee will be recommending a site visit to see the problems of this site for themselves. If they are not minded to reject the plans as submitted. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Right, Mr. Paul.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I'd like to thank Chris for talking about policy H319, because I think it absolutely is the point. The design is quite nice, actually. It's great. It's the location that is the problem. Does it have a strategic impact on the master plan? Well, for about 20 years plus, councils here will know better than me, pedestrianisation has been balked in Haverhill because Girtings needed access off the High Street, right opposite where that access is. Girtings have finally brought forward a really interesting plan that comes to you for this building consent, which includes real access. So finally, they do not need this front access. Haverhill Area Working Party have seen the presentation. the Town Council voted to support the listed buildings as an application of 13. Strategically, that means the one remaining problem with stopping pedestrianisation has been removed. So putting another problem in exactly the same place is clearly a strategic impact. It will stop pedestrianisation. Or we are saying that it's not a strategic impact because we allow cars to drive through the pedestrian area to go backwards and forwards as they like to a residential development in the middle of the town centre. It is a very narrow entrance. Chris is quite correct in terms of 3.3 metre wide gap for vehicles to get down, as long as you remove the guttering and all the downpipes, etc. Otherwise, it's just about 10 foot. That means the vehicles have to go up and down that very narrow bit. Undoubtedly, we will have cars reversing out onto the pedestrian area. None of the construction lorries will be able to get through there. Chris has talked about the fact that either side of that development is development land earmarked for the master plan. It is quite clear that a proposal could come through that would include the land that's in green there and some of the Bell Hotel site. That would put a block right across the middle of the master plan development. How can that not be a strategic impact? And lastly, the Haverhill vision that you've worked long and hard for talks about aspiration 29. It's about improving retail. It talks about, in terms of policy CS10, Haverhill Town Centre will continue to be the focus for new retail, leisure, cultural and office development. This is a residential development right in the middle of the town centre that will require vehicles to go in and out. It does not conform with Vision 2031. It does not conform to policy CS10. It does not conform to policy S2 It clearly has a strategic impact. Otherwise, we will have a development with cars driving through the pedestrian precinct. And frankly, I don't think developers will have much success selling houses that you can't drive through.
Could you wind up, please? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Right, next we have the agent, Stephanie Weeks.
Thank you, Chair. As you said, my name is Stephanie Weeks and I'm the agent for this application, and I act on behalf of S2 Estates, the owners and the applicant for this site. As members will be aware, this is a vacant site and it's located within a primary shopping frontage in Haverhill Town Centre. We've also been told that it's been situated within the Haverhill and Queen Street Conservation Area, and most importantly, it's opposite a Grade 2 star listed building. The proposals before members have carefully considered the sensitive nature of these surroundings and have been developed in partnership with both council and county officers to provide what we consider to be a suitable and sensitive solution for this vacant town centre site. It is acknowledged that the property has an allocation to the rear. This allocation is in combination with Post Office car park and Argos car parks to the rear of their sites and forms part of the mixed-use strategic site identified in Haverhill Vision as we've heard. This proposal acknowledges this allocation very clearly. Due to issues of prematurity, we have not come forward at this stage with proposals for the rear of the site. S2 Estates are very positive about the future prospect of development here and are happy, willing and ready to engage once other parties are able to come to the table. The proposal seeks the redevelopment of a former public house to form an A1 retail unit. The upper floors will remain in residential use and the rear of the property will be developed to provide a total of 5 one-bedroom flats and 6 two-bedroom flats. The remaining areas of the site, as you've seen, are given over to 8 car parking spaces and landscape areas, as well as 16 secured and covered cycle stores. Due to the constraints of the site and not wishing to prejudice the future development potential, there are a ratio of 0.5 spaces per dwelling, but this is considered appropriate by both planning and county officers. As we've heard, there are restrictions on vehicle access from the High Street, and this is also acknowledged by the submission. S2 Estates have provided a unilateral undertaking to ensure that any future occupiers are made aware of the restrictions and potential issues that may arise from that, and will be informed prior to their decision to commence with any purchase of properties. Overall, the proposal before the council has worked with the surrounding constraints and ultimately brings about a raft of benefits to the area. These include bringing back into use a vacant retail unit for retail purposes in the town centre primary shopping frontage area. It's a windfall site. It provides a net increase of 9 units for the housing stock for the local area. The residential element of the proposal offers high quality, generous accommodation in a sustainable location. It seeks to incorporate sustainable design principles where possible and provides an excellent level of parking, cycle parking. The retention and conversion of the original public house rather than the demolition of this maintains an important and historic building within the street scene and helps preserve the setting of the nearby Grade 2 stylistic St Mary's Church. For these reasons, we would ask that members consider the proposals and support this and grant and planning permission. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, committee, Councillor Byrne, I think it's your patch, isn't it?
It most certainly is, Chair. I don't really want to take colleagues' time up by going over and endorsing what Colin Court and Councillor Brown has contributed, but I do support their presentations to you. Representations have been made by local residents, the Town Council and by County Councillors. All these representations do not support the application. Issues relating to vehicle access and to the impact on our vibrant and thriving high street are a common thread in these representations. There's a number of colleagues here that sit with me on the Haverhill Area Working Party, which I'm going to mention next. The Planning Officer's assertion that applications for development which would have a strategic impact on the development of a master plan will be only considered once the master plan is adopted is clearly observed. That assertion also undermines commitments previously tendered by the CEO at our last Corp meeting. So there's either a massive communication problem or somebody wasn't telling us how it is. The application should be refused on the following grounds. The application is at variance with TCR2 in providing only marginal retail use in a prominent high street location. The application relies on a single point of access from a vibrant and thriving high street. All current planning guidance recognises a requirement for at least limited pedestrianisation, currently enshrined in TROs for 10 to 4 weekdays and all day on a Saturday. Vehicle access to the property would be excluded at these times. And I would like to say is that the only reason that the Bell Public House was able to have access during 10 or 4 was for deliveries to the pub, and the people that lived in the public house at the time were the people that leased the pub and run the pub. The application includes a structure that would inhabit access to the rear of the premises for emergency and service vehicles at all times. The application has no specific regard to foul and clear water drainage in an area at risk of flooding. The application fails to recognise current proposals in the Vision 2031 document, with further detailed work underway on the town centre master plan. The application shows the bin store beyond the archway. Bins would have to be removed to the highway for collection. In summary, the application is an inappropriate development in a significant location with substantial potential to compromise the development of the town centre, and I really would like to emphasise that. I call on councillors to refuse entirely ill-considered application and to pursue the favour of the planning officers to recognise substantial flaws in this proposal. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. Councillor Marks.
Thank you, Chair. As the town clerk from Haverhill said, the question of Haverhill High Street has been going as long as I lived in Haverhill and beyond that even. And we still haven't got the situation resolved. And yet here we have a scheme being proposed which is going to put more traffic into the High Street than we really want. It just sounds like absolute lunacy to me. I can't see why on earth we're even contemplating the thing. Particularly in the light of the fact that the One Haverhill group is commissioning planning consultants to help with designing a master plan. For goodness sake, let's hear what they've got to say before we get any further. But if we start doing this in the middle of it and mess the whole thing up before we get anywhere, then I just think it's a complete waste of time.
Thank you, Councillor Marks. Councillor Marlowe.
Thank you, Chairman. My initial feeling is that this application is really rather premature, bearing in mind all the master plans and lack of clarity about what the rear land is going to achieve for Haverhill. So I was going to suggest a site visit, but if Councillor Byrne is moving refusal, I would second it.
I would like to move refusal, please, Chair.
In which case I will second
Thank
it.
you. Councillor Redhead.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, I must say that listening to the presentation from our planning officer, I was somewhat taken aback because we've spent, to my knowledge, close on 20 years trying to promote aspirations which include the pedestrianisation of Haverhill High Street. At the last meeting, we were given some encouragement and a good deal of assurance, in fact, that the main obstacle was out of the way, that some agreement had been reached, which would give the opportunity to pedestrianise it. Now, to throw this into the works makes a nonsense of the whole business. And I really do ask, what are we all doing? Because, you know, we've made it quite clear for years and years now what the aspirations of Haverhill and the Town Council and the Borough Council as a whole are. And now we've got a proposal which, if it goes forward, would prevent the pedestrianisation of the High Street. It makes a whole nonsense of it. And as I say again, I'm disturbed to hear one of our planning officers promoting such a thing when he too was present and knows what was discussed only a month ago.
Thank you, Councillor Redhead. Councillor Beckwith.
Thanks, Chair. Haverhill's certainly spoken, isn't it? I live in Bury, but I feel like I just want to chirp in on one little bit of this application. I don't like this. The concerns are acknowledged and recognised, but given the existing lawful use of the site and access thereto do not constitute legitimate grounds to refuse planning permission. No, but we're making it worse. The fact that it's going to be difficult to deal with the problems, which is acknowledged later on in that paragraph, it's going to have to be addressed with the emerging plan. We shouldn't be adding to the problems at this stage. What I'd like to touch on, though, is in paragraph 34, it refers to the covenant that's going to be put on future occupiers of the site to make them aware of the restricted access to the site. I've had issues with covenants in my own ward many years ago. Discussions with the legal officers of this council said that the covenants are not worth the paper they're written on. And I think that's something we should bear in mind when we're looking at covenants mentioned in this. I'm going to support the April minutes on this one.
Thank you, Councillor Beckwith. Councillor Ray.
Thank you, Chair. Well, there are some imaginative parts of this application for reuse of a redundant site effectively in the centre of Haverhill. But as has been pointed out, you know, I think it's premature. There are too many unanswered questions over what's going to happen to the High Street in terms of pedestrianisation, and critically, from my perspective, what's going to happen in those three areas of land to the rear. And the big drawback that I see, acknowledging the other points that Councillor Byrne has referred to, the big problem with this is lack of access from the rear. And of course, what we've got is the potential with the redevelopment of those three areas of land to the rear to provide access from the rear. So I think it would be wrong now to approve this and inbuild a problem for the future. But actually, if this is refused now and come back in the future with access from the rear in conjunction with redevelopment of those three areas, then I think it would be probably acceptable. But I should be voting for refusal at this stage.
Thank you, Councillor Rowe. You want to come back, Chris?
Thank you, Chairman. What I would just like to say, just as a point of order, I was not actually at the Hawke meeting a month ago. But looking through the various points, I think rather than try and address each of the points individually, I think there is a single point coming through from members that it's considered that this site is premature. If this was an undeveloped site like Empire Yard, I would be 100% in agreement. However, this is not an undeveloped site. This is an existing site. This building exists. It is an existing commercial public house that could be used as a shop that wouldn't need planning permission. It has residential units. It has an existing access. That access is completely unrestricted. So, how is this development different? In what way? What was constantly being said is this will result in more traffic. What's being proposed is 8 parking spaces. These will be residents who may use it once, twice a day. Who knows? They might be using it a lot more. We can't prejudge that. But at the moment, there is a building on this site which is currently derelict, but it could be reopened and it has unrestricted access. So, in no way would the approval of this planning application make the matter worse. It may perpetuate a situation which currently exists. And I acknowledge that. That the position that this takes access from the High Street exists at the moment, and that will not change. And if you refuse that planning application, the situation will still be unchanged. There will still be a commercial building here with ancillary residential use, which takes access from the High Street. That is why I bring you back to the wording of policy HV19. It's a policy I know very well. I wrote it. And what that says is, if the development has a significant impact, it may have an impact, but is it significant? Is it grounds for refusal? If we face an inspector at a public inquiry, and the inspector asks, what is the existing use of that site? Does it have an existing access? And in what way has that changed? The answer will be, well, there is no change. The problem that we face today doesn't change. If we approve this, the problem doesn't change. It doesn't resolve a problem that exists, but it doesn't make it worse. This is an issue that we have to face, and it's part of the role of the master plan. But we're talking about an existing vacant site. We're not talking about, an existing developed site. We're not talking about an undeveloped site. Do we wish any proposal in the town centre to be held up until the master plan is approved? I don't think we do. This doesn't prejudice the achievement of an alternative access. But until such time as that site at the rear comes forward for development, and that will need the cooperation of at least one of the adjacent neighbouring properties, we cannot provide that alternative access from the rear. What this development ensures is that the layout of the site ensures that it doesn't prejudice the achievement of that access in the future, if that is ultimately the solution to the problem. What we mustn't do today is approve something which would effectively prevent us from achieving that alternative access in the future. This doesn't do that. I think probably that's the main point. I can't emphasise that anymore. What we've got to look at is the difference between what exists at the moment and what is proposed. This is not an undeveloped site. The other issue about this is a this would not affect the vitality of the town centre. because it's only a small amount of retail. This is a significant retail shop being proposed in the region of 270, I think, square metres. That is a significant sized shop, larger than your average town centre shop unit. It will bring vibrancy to the town centre if this building is reopened. I'll leave it at that. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Right, Councillor Byrne.
Yes, thank you, Chair, allowing me to come back. I would suggest this is a significant difference from what's been there previously. When it was a public house, of course they had deliveries when they delivered the beer and whatever, but that wasn't 8 vehicles coming in and out numerous times a day. The vehicles were on obviously days that was agreed, but once they're delivered they were gone. Other vehicles did not park at the back of this public house, never, because there was always tables and chairs out on the forecourt during the summer period, and in the winter those gates were locked. So I'm suggesting to you that where the pub had the deliveries that were obviously necessary, you're now creating a situation where you're going to have at least 8 vehicles coming in and out on a regular basis onto a high street that is currently pedestrianised between 10 and 4. We know people abuse it, but pedestrianisation has been an aim and aspiration for Haverhill for at least 30 years, and we're still sitting here obviously discussing it and trying to get, hopefully when the master plan happens, get some agreement on it. And I think this is it is a significant change. It is difficult for us in Haverhill as councillors to refuse this, because obviously we need new vibrant business in the high street, but not at any cost, I'm afraid.
Thank you. Councillor Stevens.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, I've listened carefully to this debate. One thing I feel at a loss is that I don't have in front of me the concept statement or the emerging master plan and the thoughts that are coming through that are well known by Haverhill residents. But there could be a solution here. We are looking for the regeneration of this building and the shop and the providing of accommodation. But the problem is the existing car parking. Now, if we rescinded that car parking as part of this application, then there could be a solution. There may be a cost, but there would be a solution. So rather than refuse it and be at the mercy of an inspector, if we deferred it for further negotiation to rescind these 8 residential parking units, there could be a solution right through that would satisfy everybody. And I am minded to propose deferment on that issue, that the parking element of this site be rescinded. I'm not sure about deliveries, this needs looking at and reassurance. Then the worries of the local councillors and residents and the town council could be addressed. It wouldn't prejudice the overall master plan process, but it would help regenerate these particular buildings. So I am minded to propose an amendment that we defer this on the specific instructions to renegotiating the parking element in this particular application. It may well find a seconder, it may well fall.
I think it's found a second behind you. Councillor Woody.
Hello, yes, I fully support what Councillor Stevens has said. It would be a shame not to develop this area, not to give some new houses to the town centre and a new shop, for the sake of a small car park. If we took the car parking element out of it, could we look at it again once the master plan is
up and running. And in the meantime, it could be used as outside amenity space for the houses or dwellings that were proposed.
Thank you. If you want help, people want to come right. Councillor Marlowe.
Just a point of clarification. We've got an amendment on, we've got a proposal on the table already. Do we vote on that first, or is the amendment coming first now?
The amendment comes first now.
Okay. My other question is, could the officers tell me how many vacant shops there are in Haverhill High Street at the moment, please? Because again, I would say that a large retail premises is not essential at this stage, and I reiterate what I say, that this proposal is premature.
Just my clarification.
Chair, can I ask Town Clerk about the empty premises?
Thank you.
Thank you. Just to clarify, I understood Councillor Stevens to say he was minded to make that. He hadn't actually done it. Is that correct?
For clarification, as it did meet a seconder, I will propose that amendment.
Is that then seconded? Thank you.
So we're now on the amendment. And I'll carry on down my list here and then we'll go back again afterwards. Councillor Holland.
Well, it wasn't that amendment or a previous amendment. I was just about to say that Mr. Rand tends to put things in words a lot better than I can. I've heard about all the things, that ifs, buts and maybes about a forthcoming thing, but the actual thing is that we have a property here which is standing derelict, has done for some time, and on another day, the people who have objected today would be complaining that they've got an eyesore in their high street, and what are we doing about it? The thing is that, as Mr. Rand said, this can be brought back into retail use quite easily. As another pub or a hotel, as a pub and a restaurant, it closed down because it wasn't viable, and I had my fears for lots and lots of pubs in our borough here and the rest of the country surviving. This is one way of bringing property back into use. Whether or not the Haverhill needs more retail space is not for me to say. I don't know. I don't shop in Haverhill High Street. But again, on another day, the same people objecting would be asking us to provide much needed housing in their high street. So, and we've heard from the applicant that they are quite prepared to talk to the adjoining owners when the matters come forward in a master plan. At the moment they can't go to the next door neighbour and say, oh, we won't do this, we won't do that, we won't do the other, because the master plan hasn't been done. And I'm sure they will talk to bring all this sort of, I'm not saying unused land, but land that could be used for better purposes behind all the buildings there, into better use, where an access out, not onto the high street, can be considered. So I think the objectors have got a complete right to object in what they've said, but the fact is, I'm with our planning officer here, that it's a building that can be used for what it can be used, and it can be enhanced to give more accommodation within the Haverhill Town Centre area. So I won't be voting for either of the amendments. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Beckwith.
Thanks, Chairman. I certainly won't be voting for the amendment because I don't believe we should have 11 residential flats without any parking. What I would like to ask somebody is, assuming that the master plan comes forward and that the Haverhill gets its long-awaited pedestrianisation, what are you going to tell the occupants of those 11 flats when they say, why did you build these homes when you knew what was going to happen? What was likely to happen?
Thank you. Right. Councillor Clifton Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think the planning officer has a point. It is unrestricted at the moment. We haven't got the power to change that. And any inspector will look at that and say, here is accommodation in the middle of Haverhill which is not being used. I think we could very easily get this clear, whether we can get the access to the river. Otherwise I can see no reason at all to confuse it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Clifton Brown. Councillor Everett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've listened to the debate that's been going on. I have to say I bow to the expertise of the Haverhill councillors and residents. I don't like others shopping on a regular basis in Haverhill. I do know the area reasonably well. And I think that Councillor Stevens has made a valid point, albeit I think that that we should not perhaps jump too quickly, and I would rather see it go back for a deferment and actually make a decision based on conversations that we've had in this meeting this morning. I think it should have a longer time to be considered than just half an hour here this morning. So I feel I won't be voting for the amendment, but I don't really like the idea of the refusal either, so I'm a bit fixed in between, I'm afraid.
Could be plain for Councillor Marks.
Thank you, Chairman. The point is we're well into getting a master plan sorted out. Now, if we get a master plan and this thing is a blot on the landscape and stops that master plan developing, then I think that's foolhardy. I think we should sort out the master plan and see how this might fit into that plan. And I would go for deferment until the master plan is sorted out.
Thank you. Councillor Rowe.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not sure that we're in a position to defer it until the master plan is sorted out. We might be years away. But I do think probably on balance a deferral is the right way forward. Inviting the applicant to go away and look at two aspects of this. One is the number of car parking places on site, bearing in mind that, as I understand it, the applicant has control of that area behind the site. So it is not beyond the wit of man to move that rear boundary of the application site a little bit to provide more space in that yard for extra car parking. The other issue is rear access, and I think rear access could be addressed in the short term by talking to Argos. Argos has what in effect is a public car park or a publicly accessible car park, and they might be willing to negotiate an access from that to the rear yard in the interim, pending the master plan or whatever it is for the area to the rear of this site that could look at the problem, the long-term solution to access to the site. And ultimately, if you like, that's approval of that is under our control. So we can make sure that is covered in that master plan. So I should be supporting the motion for deferral.
Thank you, Councillor. Chris, over to you. Argos car park versus access.
Thank you very much. I cannot at this stage suggest that we should be encouraging them to be talking to Argos to gain access over that land. That land is one of the strategic sites identified in the Haverhill Vision 2031 and needs to be brought forward on a comprehensive basis, so the same argument applies. Having said that, a couple of points of clarification. Councillor Byrne made reference to how the pub operated and the fact that it had a seating area. That's acknowledged. However, we have to look at the lawful use. And if this development did not go ahead and the existing public house was reopened as a shop, any occupier of the shop unit may take it upon themselves to provide a customer car park at the rear, in which case they would have unrestricted access down the site. There is no restriction at present that would prevent them from doing that. And any retail operator may choose to do that. If you had someone like Mark Chapman wanting people to pick up their televisions, take that on, he could legitimately open that up to customers and then have a significant increase in the traffic usage. That's what could happen. I'm not suggesting that's what will happen. For a point of clarification on the idea of the deferral, you will note from the report that the Highway Authority has stated that they will not accept nil car parking on the site. Having said that, We could defer the application. I can speak to the applicant and see if they are prepared to submit a revised scheme without any on-site car parking. We have a good indication already that the Highway Authority will object to that because of the lack of car parking. However, it is within your gift to make a decision upon that basis. If you choose that you wish to see this development come forward without the car parking, then you could make that decision. However, in order to reach that situation, I have to receive a proposal from the applicant that puts forward this development without the car parking. I am prepared to do that on your behalf. The applicant's agent is here today, has heard the argument. So that is an option if, as members, you opt for deferral. I would urge against refusal of this application as it stands. I think at appeal we will be faced with a very difficult situation. Thank you.
Thank you. Right. Councillor Marno.
Chairman, I didn't have an answer to my question about the number of empty retail premises on Haverhill High Street at the moment.
My apologies, Chairman. I'm afraid I don't know that number, but historically, when compared to national averages, Haverhill High Street has done very well in a low number of vacant premises. There will always be vacant premises. There is a natural turnover, but I don't have that figure to hand. Perhaps our economic development section will be able to provide that information for you.
If I may, I would beg to disagree with that because I think Haverhill is running above the national average in empty retail space, but unless we allow the clerk to confirm that, then we'll just have to disagree.
Depends whether we're talking empty retail space or empty retail space in the High Street. Councillor Bird, can you assist?
I think I probably can, and I think we are doing okay in terms of empty shops in Haverhill High Street compared to other towns of a similar nature. I would, and this is just me looking at the empty shops that I saw about 2 or 3 weeks ago, but they do get filled up with charity shops and other things, and I believe there's probably on average about 5 that are currently empty, but the charity shops move in, close down and move on. But I think it's 5 currently, and I don't know whether we're allowed to ask the town clerk to have a view on this.
Councillor Oliver.
Thank you, Chairman. I don't live in Haverhill, and so I really don't feel it's my place to make a comment, but it has come to this committee, and I'm a member of that committee, so as such, I will have a say. I've been listening to what's been said, and I was concerned about the cars going in and out of this pub yard, but then I realised that we have a similar situation in Navigate Street, where we have a pedestrian area in Navigate Street in Bury, and there are crossroads across it in 2 instances, and cars go in and out of there without mowing down the native population. So I'm sure that this is such a narrow little yard, they've got to come out slowly and carefully anyhow. So inning and out there is not a problem. The problem, of course, is they're going up and down the High Street, and as has been pointed out, this would prevent High Street from being non-pedestrian. The next question you've got to think is, you're urging that this wait for the development of the master plan. Well, if I picked up threads correctly, the master plan has been talked about for 20 years. And how many more years is it going to be talked about before it actually lays its egg? And so, are you prepared to have this building standing empty for that unspecified number of years? And I would have thought that the last thing you want in the High Street in Haverhill is to have empty buildings. And so if this can be addressed, I certainly should. And the question really then is you've got to balance the loss of the possibility, or even though it be a temporary one, of the high street being closed to vehicular traffic, and the fact that you now have a building that's being used and put to good use. Bearing in mind that there is a possibility for a rear access when the master plan finally hatches. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Oliver. Okay, right, we have it proposed on an amendment for deferral to clarify information relating to car parking, what we're going to achieve, and to see if we can improve the other aspects of the application. Speak.
Thank you, Chairman. Just for clarification, I think the deferral is on the basis that I be instructed to speak to the applicant to seek to remove the car parking element from the proposal.
Thank you for that. Can I just seek some clarity? It is, I would say, extremely unlikely that Suffolk County Council will ever support that. They always insist a new build has a number of car parking facilities. So what is the point of that if we know it's going to get kicked out at the end of the day, please?
Basically, that is what the committee have asked to do. So that is the way we can go forwards and see what we can achieve. The County Council have changed their minds before on other applications. Councillor Oliver.
Thank you, Chairman, for letting me too come back. Could it be that we can soften this idea, and instead of insisting that there, or asking that there is no car parking in that yard, we say that when the master plan has provided a rear access, then parking in this yard ceases?
Thank you, Chairman. No, we could not require that. There's no means of achieving that. In response to the earlier question, if the Highway Authority does object to the lack of car parking, as I mentioned previously, ultimately it is your decision whether you accept that advice or not.
Steady on, Councillor Holder.
Well, it is an amendment matter. We've been told that, that yard can be used for car parking now, so I think it's sort of tilting at windmills, quite frankly, because they can use the buildings that are there for whatever use they are being, and park cars that people may be using those buildings for. It could be little workshops or whatever. I mean, what's the... I think the deferment, I think it's Mr. Ram being nice to us, actually. I think it's a waste of time.
Councillor Whittaker.
Thank you. Just a suggestion, could we amend the amendment, if that's possible?
No, you have to get the amendment out of the way first.
No, by deferring it until car park is looked at again, car parking and rear access is looked at. So we're not...
We are deferring it to look at car parking again. Yeah. Any more? Councillor Ray, is your pen poised?
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, what we want, I mean, we've got the applicant's agent here. I mean, she's listened to our concerns about car parking, about access. I mean, Chris can speak to the applicant. But what we want is some different, better proposals. And I think, personally, from my perspective, to go for nil car parking is crazy. I mean, people, if they're going to live in these flats, they're going to have cars. They're going to have to put their cars somewhere. So to my mind, we need more car parking, not less. But we want access not from the high street. And if that's on a temporary basis, pending the outcome of the master plan, that's fine with me. So let the applicant come back. You know, let's not tell them what the solution is. Let them come back with a revised application.
Thank you. Well, I think Chris and the applicant have both got the applicant's agent have both got the drift of where we're coming from. So, are we happy to go with deferment? Those in favour, please show. And those against?
It's 11-4, that, 4 against, so the amendment is carried.
No, if the amendment's been carried, the amendment is...
So that application has now been deferred and will come back to us at some stage. Councillor Bird.
Yes, please, Chair, thank you very much. What I forgot to mention earlier, getting carried away with all the different issues, I would like to ask colleagues to support a site visit, please.
Yes, we can do a site visit as per our normal schedule. That will not be a problem. If members are happy to do that. We see some hands. Site visit?
Right.
Thank you. I think that's a majority.